Hey there. Hope everything's going great for you so far in 2025. I want to give you a little bit of my notes this morning before I preach them. I'm preaching a message called Let God Lead. And you know what better way to start off the new year than putting God first, letting Him lead? And that sounds simple enough, but I bet as everybody has experienced moving forward in the year, it gets harder and harder because there's a lot of things that demand of your time. And all of a sudden we kind of find ourselves catching the things that kind of come our way rather than really pursuing after the plans and the purposes of God. We get really bogged down in things that demand of us. And Romans 12:1 and 2, Paul told this to the Romans. He says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice. You know, sacrifices aren't easy. That's why it's called a sacrifice. But he's begging of you, begging of us, begging of the church to make our bodies, present our bodies as a living sacrifice. And it says this is the sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. And he goes on to say, this is your reasonable service. And I always like to say this because if you go and look at this in the Amplified, it says, in light of all that God has done for you, it is something that should be very common sense that we could do this one thing. The ultimate sacrifice was made by Jesus, but if you really want to sacrifice for Him, it would be to present your bodies as a living sacrifice to Him, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed. How do we transform? We don't transform because we try real hard, but the transformation comes, he says, by renewing your mind with the Word of God. It says that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. You know, so many things in this world can beg of us, can scream out at us, can huff and puff, you know, they don't get their way. People are just our own selves don't get our way and really demand that we put them first. But if we don't put God first, we won't be any good to those people, won't be any good to ourselves, won't be any good to the things that we really do need to take care of. They're important things. I would challenge you not to be the person who just goes around greasing the squeaky wheels. Everybody ought to know that expression, but just anything that just kind of squeaks out at you, like, okay, I'll go take care of this, and we can say it this way, going around putting out fires. You know, you really need to be the person that is on the offensive side of the ball, not the defensive side of the ball, whereas you're not reacting to life, but you're pursuing the life that God has called you and created you for. Jesus demonstrated this type of devotion back when he was like 12 years old, and his mom and his brother, you know, lost him. They thought they lost him. They were leaving a big festival, and they looked around. They couldn't find him. And of course, they found him in the house of God, and kind of reprimanded him a little bit. But his answer in Luke 2:49 says this. He says, "Didn't you know that I would be about my Father's business?" Meaning, like, I've got to do what God's called me to do. And he reiterated this later on in John 9:4 when he said, I must work the works of him who sent me. I must work the works of the one who sent me, the one meaning God. I don't believe that we should use God as an excuse to not take care of business or our responsibilities. But if our business and our responsibilities are so great that we don't have time to put God first, then we must reevaluate our earthly commitments that we've made and believe God to get us into a position where we serve Him instead of the world and instead of our own desires and the desires of others. And so if you want to check out the rest of this message, I'll be preaching it here just in a little while on WOFTX Word of Faith Facebook page, or you can go over to our YouTube. We'll be streaming it live there. You can go back and watch it if you miss it. But I hope you have a great rest of your 2025. And I hope, some of the commitments that you've made going into 2025 are going well, and you stay with that commitment. It's going to be a sacrifice. Don't think that it's going to get easy or easier. You might get into a routine, but if it's a sacrifice, it's never going to come easy, but the rewards are great. We'll see you again soon.